Okay. The Planning Commission meeting for June 16, 2015 has now come to order. Roll call, please.
Chair Hughes, Vice Chair Dagley,
Here.
Commissioner McKenney,
Here.
Commissioner Stewart,
Here.
and Commissioner Villepadois.
Here.
And for the record, Hughes is absent, excused absence.
Thank you. Conflict of interest. Any planning commissioner or staff member who has a direct conflict of interest on any of the scheduled items on the agenda to be considered tonight, please declare your conflict. Seeing none, public comment period. Okay, at this point in time, members of the public may comment on any item not appearing on the agenda tonight and within the subject matter jurisdiction of the Planning Commission. Individual comments will be limited to a maximum of 5 minutes per person, and each person may speak once during this time, and they cannot yield their time to any other person. Under state law, matters presented during that this public comment period cannot be discussed or acted upon by the Planning Commission. For the record purposes, please state your name and city of residence. Would anybody like to make some public comment?
Good evening, Acting Chair Dagley and members of the Planning Commission. My name is Jill Anderson. I'm the City Manager for the City of Riverbank, and I am here this evening speaking under public comment to publicly announce the arrival of Donna Kinney in the position of our new Planning and Building Manager. Pleased that Donna joined our staff on June 1st, and I know that you will enjoy working with her. She's already become an integral member of our team. She brings with her a wealth of experience working her way up for the ranks from assistant planner, associate planner, a senior planner, and then ultimately the director of community development for the city of Livingston. She's also done contract work for the city of Hayward, and has just been highly recommended by city managers and planning professionals in the area. So I know that you're going to find her to be engaging and professional, just as we have in the short time she's been with us. And I just wanted to publicly welcome her to the City of Riverbank and welcome her to her first Planning Commission meeting this evening. So I know you join me in welcoming her to the City of Riverbank team. So.
Welcome.
Thank you. Yes, welcome. Any other public comment? Receiving no further comment, let's move to the consent calendar. Pending any comments or concerns about any of these items, is there a motion to approve the consent calendar?
Move for approval.
Second?
I'll second that.
Roll call, please.
Vice Chair Dagley,
Yes.
Commissioner McKenney,
Yes.
Commissioner Stewart,
Yes.
and Commissioner Villepadois.
Yes.
Okay, unanimous. We're going to move to the public hearing items at this point in the meeting. Item 3.1, tentative parcel map application 03-2014.
Thank you, Vice Chair Dagley. This project has been brought to you forth by Dennis Wilson. He's in the audience today, and he'll probably be speaking on this item forthcoming. It is a request to subdivide, and then we'll wait for the PowerPoint. It's a request to subdivide one 40,000 square foot parcel into two parcels. Parcel 1 is 27,466 square feet. Parcel 2 is 12,543 square feet. The Parcel 2 would contain the existing house and garage with granny flat conversion above the garage. The property is located at 6413 4th Street. APN is 132017019 and is zoned R3 multiple family residential and has a general plan designation of high density residential. It is also located within the downtown specific plan, which designates this property as mixed use residential. The city services currently serving the site will remain unchanged, including water and sewer. And as you can see, the parcel is located on 4th Street. It's bounded by, on the south, the BNSF Railroad Tracks and Patterson Road. To the west is 3rd Street, North Alley, as well as Santa Fe, I think that, and 4th Street on to the east. The subject parcel is located, as I said, in the Downtown Specific Plan. The map application was submitted on November 17, 2014. The existing house and garage granny flat were constructed in 1942 and 1946 respectively for a combined square footage of 1,820 square feet. And if we go back to this image here, that's located on parcel 1. So that's the house on the south, and then right above it is the garage with the granny flat located on top. And staff has been working with the applicant to respond to design and general plan policy issues, and I'll go over those issues here in this presentation a little bit. The parcel map that was submitted, as you can see, generally speaking, divides the property in half, though parcel 1 is going to be quite a bit larger at 0.63 acres, and parcel 2 is going to have the remaining house and the garage. Lot sizes within the R3 standard in the Riverbank Municipal Code that does meet the minimum standard of 6,000 square feet, as well as both parcels do meet the lot width standard of 65 feet. So there's no issue there. The general plan policy issues include the Riverbank Municipal Code. We'll start with that. Requires that the Planning Commission find that the project is consistent with the city's general plan. The city's 2009 to 2014 certified housing element has a policy in which states to preserve current multifamily sites, and that program within that policy is to discourage land division of sites currently zoned high-density residential, which the site is currently designated that with the general plan designation. The intent of this policy and program is to preserve sites that are currently zoned multifamily and have the potential for multifamily development. Ultimately, the city does have a need for multifamily sites through the housing element and through the regional housing needs assessment, and we would like to preserve those sites for future development. And subdividing such parcels may result in a significantly reduced development potential. This is due to a number of factors, which includes the size is reduced to a point where multifamily development is not possible. Access, including emergency services, is limited, and the result of the subdivision leaves the remaining parcels such that the building layout is hindered and reduces the potential for higher density uses. And that could be in the form of setback requirements, parking standards, right-of-way width standards that, if all included, may hinder the density that we look for with the general plan. And staff has asked the applicant to provide evidence in support of this finding, written evidence. To this date, none has been provided. I'm sure that the applicant will speak to this regard coming up during the public comment period, which will be here in a little bit. And we also requested that the applicant show the multifamily development potential of parcel 1. That's the vacant 27,466 square foot parcel that would remain as a result of the proposed subdivision. And the applicant has submitted a sketch that we have reviewed. And as you can see, parcel 2 remains unchanged with that existing house in the garage. And then with 10 dwelling units, that puts the density just below the minimum of about 15.98 dwelling units per acre. The minimum is 16, which that should be okay. Setbacks look okay with this proposed development. The issue that we have is the right-of-way 15 feet does not meet the city's standard of 25 feet, and as such, if you do 25 foot minimum, it could reduce the parking, which the minimum parking for 10 units for multifamily is 2 parking spaces per unit, which is 20 spaces minimum. And I have kind of a summary. And then another issue that we had, and of course it's a sketch, so it is not, a full-blown, site plan, and it does offer us just an idea of what a potential site or a potential development would look like. So not every requirement's required to be on there, of course, but we notice that the site does not allocate space for on-site stormwater drainage and filtering. which the applicant may speak to in regards to that in a little bit. And staff has determined in this regard that the development potential is drastically reduced if the proposed subdivision is approved. As far as environmental, pretty straightforward. We've determined that the proposed parcel map is exempt pursuant to section 15332, class 32 of the state CEQA guidelines, because the parcel map meets the conditions prescribed in that section. It's infill development. And our recommendation to Planning Commission today is deny the request to subdivide the subject parcel, and that's based on the general plan consistency findings that the project is not consistent with the Housing Element Policy 4.2 and Program 4.2A, and the project is not consistent with the Riverbank Municipal Code action on a tentative parcel map, which prescribes some language for denying a request, and the big issue there is that the project is not consistent with the general plan. And then the lack of evidence to support the multifamily development potential for parcel 1, citing the right-of-way issues as well as the parking standards and such. And then simply the city is in need for multifamily sites that do have a good solid development potential, and subdividing would reduce that potential. So there's a couple of options for the Planning Commission in regards to this request. The first is to deny the request to subdivide the subject parcel based on the findings I laid out in the previous slide. The other is to continue the public hearing to a date certain. That could be to the next Planning Commission meeting, and then staff will need to, the Planning Commission will need to supply staff with appropriate language to support the stated general plan policy and Riverbank municipal findings, and then staff will also need to prepare a resolution for formal approval. And thank you.
Thank you. Does the commissioners have any questions before we go into the public hearing portion? Seeing no questions?
Real quick,
okay,
I got a
sorry.
quick question for you. I'm looking at the housing element dated 2009. It's on page 16 of our. It's quoting the policy 4.2 and program 4.2A of the cities that certified 2009 to 2014.
Yes.
Is that dated already, or is this something that carries forward with these
With
the same guidelines that we're following to the high density and so forth?
yeah, it's a policy that we have in our general plan to preserve multifamily sites, and it is, you know, we're working on the 2014 to 2023 housing element, and that's a policy that will carry forward in that effort.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions before we open it to public hearing? Okay, at this point, I'm going to open this to the public hearing. If anybody would like to speak against the project, please come up to the microphone, state your name and your address. Anybody want to speak for the project? Please come forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Acting Chair Dudley and Commissioners. Dennis Wilson, Horizon Consulting, Modesto, California. I'm here tonight representing the coach of ours, David and Joanne, who are sitting to the right, and Joanne's brother, Dominic Genova. And we are here tonight, obviously, to seek your approval of this parcel map. Also present is Mike Klein, seated next to Joanne, who is the broker with Remax Realty and is involved in the sale of the property. I trust you had an opportunity to read the staff report and view the property. The sole purpose of this parcel map is to settle an estate. There is one other sibling involved in the estate, and she is not here tonight, but Dominic Genova is, and that's basically why we proceeded with a parcel map, is to cut out the house, which basically the Genova siblings were raised in. I know that we didn't have time to get the breakdown of the actual improvements that were made to the home, so I took the opportunity to make copies for commission and staff. And I think that it's a little misleading in the staff report when it talks about the fact that the house really didn't have much done to it. The 1946 date, I'm not sure where that came from, because the Genova family bought the house in 1956. Yes, it was constructed in 1942. It started out when the Genova family moved in as a one-bedroom, one-bath house. Mr. Genova, who was very handy with a hammer and nails, added 2 new bedrooms, a den, kitchen, new laundry room, new roof, stuccoed the entire house, and also added the apartment over the garage around 1957. Since Mrs. Genova passed away, the Genova siblings have been maintaining the house and spent approximately $7,500 during that period of time from 2007 to present. And if you had a chance to go by and look at it, I think you can see it's a pretty substantial house. It's an older home, obviously, but it does have a lot of potential for salvaging. It's not a house that you just want to bulldoze down, and that's why we decided to save the house and create the parcel map. General plan consistency findings. If you look at page 3 of 7, there's an omission from the housing element discussion in that staff report does not talk about the fact that when the housing element of 2009-214 was brought forth, one of the statements made on page Roman numeral 1.3 is that city does not require developers to construct housing at the maximum density. And if you skip down to page Roman numeral 5, or V, 1, inventory of land, the inventory of multiple family land only includes parcels of 2 acres and larger. That was not discussed in the staff report. And the 2 acres or more in size, at that time they reasoned that because of the size, that parcels smaller than 2 acres would have problems with development of affordable housing on the smaller properties, and may be expensive or even infeasible to do. City is also excluded from the inventory sites, and there's 5 actual statements. It's on that same page. The only one that applies here is that have existing structures or improvements that cannot be easily removed without incurring a significant cost. For example, sites containing more than a few outbuildings or a single dwelling. Obviously, this pertains to this parcel. 3 findings that are mentioned on page 407 that allow you to deny it are size, access, and building layout hindered. I don't necessarily agree with the statement that this doesn't have good access. In the staff report, they mentioned the parcel immediately west, which has, I believe, an 8-unit, 2-story apartment on it. Basically no open space, has the right amount of parking. Interestingly enough, the house on the south side was cut out. It was all one parcel, similar to the Kochevar Genova parcel, and they cut the house out that faces south of the apartments on 3rd Street. So it's very similar to what we're doing here. We've also removed, if you can see on the parcel map, several of the structures that would hinder development of the larger parcel. Those will be all removed, and we pretty much cut as much as we can off of that parcel number 2. Obviously, it'd have been more beneficial had that house been shifted more towards the alley, but we're kind of stuck with what we got. It's not going to be able to be moved north on the site. As far as the sketch, and and obviously we have good access. We have alley access and we have street access off of 4th Street. So there's good access for both fire, police, and possible tenants. Obviously, my sketch was not intended to be a final drawing. Whoever purchases this as a developer will be coming to the city with their own plan, their own design. They might even do something similar to what is on the parcel to the west, and that's a 2-story instead of 2 single stories. I just showed 2 single stories because that's a little more easier, cheaper to build, or less inexpensive to build than a 2-story unit. Also, we provided patio areas behind the units, and I thought when we redid this sketch that we had John Anderson's support, because I pointed out to him that we were doing 45-degree parking, and you don't need 25 feet for backing out of a 45-degree diagonal space. So those 15 feet driveways are perfectly adequate for backing out of a 45-degree angle space. Also, and when we did submit that, I thought that he had bought into that revised sketch. I did a little bit of a rough calculation talking to Kleinfelder and Associates, who are soils experts, and in my previous life before Horizon Consulting, my partners and I owned Mid-Valley Engineering, and we did a lot of underground storm drainage, basically a French drain and perforated pipe so that the water could percolate. There's plenty of space not only in the drive areas, but also in the landscape areas along 4th Street and also next to the alley to do the filtering for stormwater prior to going into the French drains. And there is a hard pan layer down about 3.5, 4 feet, but we would normally go under that with the French drains and provide the proper percolation under that. Also, we have the open space and recreation area, which could provide for additional filtering of any stormwater. So there is adequate stormwater to drain 27,000 square feet, less the landscape. As I mentioned, the west apartment example in the staff report has no usable open space other than lawn out in front, which has no amenities in it. It may be their area of storm drainage, but it has no usable amenities. At least we have provided that in the sketch. The map, we believe the map is consistent with the general and civic plans. And if you'll remember that 1-acre sites were not even considered in the inventory in the housing element. The fact that parcel 1 can be developed with approximately 10 units, perhaps going to a 2-story construction. Site is more than adequate for the proposed density of development, 10 dwelling units. As I started to say at the outset, this parcel map is being brought forth to settle an estate. The siblings are getting older and in need of retirement income. And Mr. Klein, who can testify to this statement, has told me that if the house is not cut out or parceled out from the 27,000 square foot parcel, then it could impact the overall price of both parcels by about $100,000 if it was included in the overall parcel and not parceled out. So basically, we would ask that you support our position and choose option number 2 in the staff report. Any questions of either me or my clients? Okay.
Very thorough, thank you.
Actually, let me just ask, since we got you up here,
Sure.
might as well see what we can further get out of you. Did you consider any other design on that behind the existing house as far as the layout? Because I know this is just a rough
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah.
and
That was
you
my
can't really do
concept,
much with it.
yeah.
It's a ballpark, if
Right.
that.
Yeah.
So,
And-
I didn't, you know, the reason I'm asking is because there are other parcels in the downtown that have small sites. The Housing Authority, for example, has a lot of smaller
Smaller units.
You don't even notice them when you're going by. And there's several over here. There's 80 units.
Right.
So, you know, I mean, there are ways to make the quads, the fourplex and all
Mm-hmm.
that stuff. So, you know, I mean, I know this is a rough estimate,
Sure.
but have you ever had any experience with, is that kind of the, what you're thinking on that property, or is it,
Well, we just,
once it's split, you're out of the picture? And
yes. I mean,
Okay.
we're not, the coach of ours and Mr. Genova are not developers, so that would be open to anybody that came in and purchased this product. That was just my concept. And like I
Okay.
said, you could do exactly what the gentleman did to the west and go 2 stories and maybe create some more units. You could limit it to senior housing, which only requires, I believe, isn't it 1 or 1.5 spaces per unit? So that maybe you could get more units by just leaving it at 55 and over housing like you mentioned. So there's a lot of different ways you could do that. And as I mentioned, it's unfortunate that the house wasn't shifted further to the north, but we didn't have that choice, and we did cut off some structures that really weren't needed to be able to maximize the parcel number 1.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so, can you explain to me that your role in this project?
I'm sorry, I'm the consultant and
So
the
you're
applicant.
just the consultant
Right.
and the,
Horizon Consulting does land planning and zoning for clients.
okay.
I do a variety of other things, but that's the primary purpose of Horizon
And
Consulting.
this was the best you guys could come up with, right?
Well, like I just mentioned, there's probably a ton of options, different options. I'm not an architect, don't claim to be, so that's just my rough sketch on what could happen.
What could happen? Okay, all right, thanks.
Any other questions? Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Anybody else want to speak on behalf of the project? Support the project? Okay, so if there are no other comments, I'm going to close the,
I have a question.
let me just close the public hearing, then I'll close. Nothing? Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing, bring the item back to the Planning Commission for consideration. Thank you.
I have a question. You said there was a realtor here? Yes, sir. Okay. If you could just approach the podium.
I'm the culprit. I'm the one that started this one.
Try to figure
My
it
name is Mike Klein. I'm with Remax Executive in Modesto, California.
out. Okay, and so my question is it to their benefit to subdivide this out or sell it all as one
It's,
parcel?
if you're selling it as a development piece, the house kind of has no value. You can't have value for the house and value for the development. You can't have both. So you're going to get X number of dollars per door that you can put in there, per unit, per dwelling. Okay, so, and at this point in time, we'd calculate that probably at around $7,000, maybe $7,500 per dwelling unit. So instead of, we're talking about getting like $60,000 or $70,000 for parcel 2, okay, which has the house on it, as opposed to being able to market that house. And my estimation today is that the market value is between $169,000 and $180,000
For parcel 2?
for parcel 2 with the house.
Right.
But you can't sell it with the house value and have the maximum value for the lots.
Okay,
And so that's why I suggested to the Genova family that they seek Dennis's counsel and try and do a lot split, because it would give them the most benefit for their family and the estate.
What about the house with the total, with the whole lot itself? What's the value of that?
You're going to get, you're going to get, depending on how many units you're going to put in, but if
Oh, I
we were
mean,
using the...
just like it is right now with the one house
Uh-huh.
and the whole, and it say this is not looking at it as 1 and 2 parcels. One parcel with this big lot and the one house on it.
Okay. You're talking about parcel 2.
No, I'm saying if we didn't subdivide
You
it.
didn't subdivide it, the whole thing, you'd probably get about $150,000.
So it's going to be less.
Oh, substantially less.
So with this smaller part is 160. With the extra,
160, and then you've got probably another $80,000, $90,000 for the other parcel.
so a little over 200,000. If you did the whole thing just
Right.
the way it is. Okay. Was that an option? I mean, did they look into that? Was that brought up?
We have not tried to market the property yet because I didn't know what direction to go into.
Okay.
But I have been a realtor for 42 years. And you just can't get both values. You can't have the value for the house and the lots.
I've been a realtor for 30. So,
With what company, sir?
Century 21.
Oh, good for you.
So that's why I'm asking, that they explore both avenues. But I understand we're trying, you work it out the best interest for your,
For the client.
for the client. Okay.
Any other questions, comments? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so comments, let's discuss here.
I have a question. The undivided parcel, sticking with that piece of property as it is designated in the general plan, full capacity, how many units could we get? Full capacity build out, high density, with green spaces and everything that the city requires? An approximate idea?
The 1 acre, right?
Yeah, it's less than 1 acre, and,
The combined
Total parcel, yeah,
no, I did
total,
have,
right.
yeah.
well, it's 16 dwelling units.
What is it, 16
Yeah.
per 1 acre?
Yes. I mean, you're looking at, we got the 10 units there. I mean, you're looking at probably another, I would say, 5 to 6 units total, with parking and with, allocations for setbacks and right-of-way and storm drainage
Okay, so we're saying
requirement.
maybe between 25 and 30, between
Yeah, I would say so.
high density?
I've got a kind of related point of view on that. Okay, so right now you've got one parcel, one house on it, say two houses with a granny flat. If you were to split, you maintain the integrity of that corner. You've maintained a house which already exists that people don't want to get rid of, so it allows you to develop this other part in the back. Otherwise, if you kept it as a single parcel, you really couldn't develop it.
You gotta sell it as one land, basically.
If the family decides to keep it indefinitely for 30 years, there'd be no development. This way, you're going to have a far greater potential to develop at least part of it.
To attract.
So, if you look at it from a standpoint of, can we, in the best of all possible worlds, you're going to have one big parcel, lots of access. This has got some challenges. The alleyway is one of them. You've got the sound on the other side, but if you don't subdivide, you're never going to get your housing. So if we want to move forward, we might want to think about this in terms of where do we provide the housing? We can't, we could allow them to go their own way, and then at some point, we could have control, or let me just put it this way, they could sell the property in a lot of different ways, and we could be involved with that future development. It it could be just a fourplex or greater. I see the value of the parcelization from that standpoint.
I see the value in what they're trying to do, but I guess my next question is, before the city went to rezone these areas to mixed use or high density, we sent out notification. This is part of the high-density area, mixed-use areas that we rezoned, right?
As we were working on the general plan,
As you were working on the general plan back in
Right.
2009,
And we sent
yes.
out notifications to the owners.
we had like 50
Right.
town hall meetings on that general
Yeah.
plan.
And did you guys attend any of those meetings? No, but I mean, I'm sure this has been in the family's mind for a while, hasn't it? And in the city, the city, we going through our organization, you know, reorganizing things to make it more, more efficient for the city to be constructed in the way moving forward. And the city went through an extensive period to zone these areas out, and then we made a real extensive effort to reach all of absentee owners as well as owner-occupied property. And from the return that we got and from the amount of meetings that we had, we went along with what was in the plan. So my question was, did the absentee, you guys are absentee owners, right? At Oakdale, right?
Can't vote, can't vote.
Okay. Oh, well, what I'm saying is we send out notices before we went through this so that you wouldn't have to go through what we're going through right now. And so it was very important that, you know, everybody spoke their opinion at that time when we were designing this. So what it does, it makes it more difficult for the city to make decisions like this that you want to do, which is going to impact, what the city has in plan going forward to 2025. So what I'm saying is that the design really hinders the opportunity to make the type of structure or development that would need to go there because of the way right now it's plotted out. What we need to do is, my suggestion would be to go with, to work with the city on a more usable subdivision that would work with the city plan. Because this one right here is not, you know, even if you have it out here, we're still looking at parking issues. We're looking at drainage issues. We're looking at emergency access issues. And that's because of the way you want to subdivide it. Does that make sense?
Well, I'd like to point out before you go any further that this is a design concept.
Right.
Yeah, I know
And
it's a sketch. It's
It's
not
a sketch. And it just allows us to get an idea of what the potential could be. And certainly there's a myriad of other ways that that site could be developed.
So
I
has the
just want you
city
to keep
worked
that in
with them
mind.
to explore those areas?
Well, we provided comment on the sketch that was provided. And like I was saying in the presentation, our two main issues are that this doesn't conform to that general plan policy in the housing element, even though that the sites that were inventoried part of that effort were more than 2 acres in size, as well as the development potential of the site is reduced as a result of this subdivision.
Okay. So since this is a sketch, what would you suggest?
That's pretty broad, I think, because any developer can come in and make their changes and.
No, what I mean is for our specific plan application, what
Well-
would be the suggestion so that it meets the criteria?
Well, the site is designated high-density residential, and that was part of the effort in 2009. The entire site is designated high-density residential. It doesn't mean that the site cannot be developed if it's split the way it is right now, or way it could be, but it means that the potential for the amount of acres that we would desire out of that designation is reduced. The potential for development is reduced, and it could take even longer for it to be developed if it is split as opposed to if it's not split, though you can argue both ways quite easily. So
Because what I'm looking at is once this goes into stone, that's it. Then you would be working to reverse it.
no, I mean,
What I'm saying, if a developer comes in okay, looks at this, sees the, buys it, sees the one house, and then we have it parceled into two, but they was hoping that it was the whole thing because it's easier to work with the one whole thing than having it split into two.
But then, yeah, they would, at that time, they would have to merge the lots. I mean, if it does go through and it's split, and then a developer comes in and wants to purchase both parcels and develop it in full, then they would have to do a lot split. Or, I mean, they would have to do a lot merge, sorry.
Okay.
So the effort is increased in that way.
Well, if I might add here also to that question, you have to look at each site as an individual project. Each project, for example, I'll tell you, there's a couple of sites around Modesto. I was with the Housing Authority. We tried to get this site on toward the end of downtown for years, but there was a problem with water drainage and the soil, and also the setback. So we could never develop that. But in a case like this, you don't know what you're going to go into and find. Theoretically, you could be contaminated soil. I'm not saying it is. What I'm saying is that I think we're really going out way too far for this. The whole concept of this is not that. It's not that project there. That's not a project. The project is to cut the parcel down to a little bit smaller size. Whatever happens in the future of that is where it's going to go.
Can we go to the slide where you had where there was a suggestion of we had the two options to go with?
Sure.
Okay.
I do want to comment on here, and I know the key item here was the lack of evidence to the potential of a multifamily, but I think we can address that by, again, if future developer comes in and says, I want to build a two-story, 10-unit apartment complex here, I think that meets the multifamily lack of. So I think we could address with that partial cutout, it could still be addressed and still meet the general plan by having the high density in that cutout L-shape parcel.
Except that whole parcel contributed to the amount of acres that were...
Correct, and we're only taking 0.25, if not plus or minus, of acreage from the whole allotment of acreage that has been segmented for multi-use or high density.
High density.
Correct. So if a developer comes in and says, I noticed you took away from the full allotment, yet I'm going to actually bring that back by building two-story versus a single-story. So he still meets the high density even by taking away the 0.25 acres in total of the full allotment of all acres out there that were recognized for high density.
That would be one option, right?
From a marketing standpoint. Well, let me ask another question to the owners. For the parcel number 1, what is your plans for that? That you have, if we can go back to the map. No,
Can we open that?
Okay, so there's no plans for that. So that's just going to sit there just like that. The other part, eventually. Okay. Now, for the part that you wanted subdivided off, parcel 2, your plans for that is the same thing, to sell it, right? Yes. Do you have any buyers for that yet? We haven't even marketed it. Okay. We just discussed this. I understand.
Last year to buy to actually market it. We didn't want to market it so badly until
Okay, so right now, Mike, I understand they added 2 bedrooms to it?
That's right.
They added 2 bedrooms?
No, that's what I was just informed of that. I just
That dialogue like that.
So is that legal 2 bedrooms or just 2 bedrooms?
It's
Is that,
discussion here.
is that the way it's tax assessed, is a 3-bedroom or just a 1-bedroom?
3 bedrooms.
my father, before we moved into the house, I was 12 years old when we moved into the house. My father bought the house. We lived across the way in another house. And my father I mean, stucco in and out, everything. We never lived in the house prior to I mean, completely remodeled everything. Added the den, kitchen, bathrooms, everything. And then we moved into the house. And it was quiet in 1956.
Sure can. What's your name?
Okay, well, could you come up to the microphone and make a comment, if you would?
You
Well-
want to reopen the public.
Yeah, you know what I think we're going to do is we're going to reopen the public hearing. It seems like more people want to make some comments, so I'm going to reopen it at this point. Please take your time to come up to the microphone if you would. Or if you prefer to sit, you can't sit down. Okay,
Well, I think
that's fine.
do they have this paper right here?
They
Yeah,
do.
we're looking at
Yeah,
it.
they do.
Okay, you have that paper.
Yeah.
That says it all. I'm sorry, I'm repeating it then. I
Okay.
didn't realize it.
Okay.
Well, you know, our issue with this is, and thanks for bringing it in, it's just that it's such late notice, you know, you'd have to walk us through it to understand what all these, you know, kind of mean, so.
This was different.
Oh, we just got this on our desk.
I thought staff
Okay.
provide that to you, so just in case I provide
Mm-hmm,
I submitted it with the staff.
yeah. Thank you. Okay, okay, so I guess we're going to close public hearing number 2 for this, and come back to consideration of the board.
I guess,
Other questions and
yeah,
comments?
my thoughts on this are, it's addressing something that's on the table, which is the what was it, the settling of an estate, as well as we're also looking at this. I know this is a rendered drawing, but again, it does illustrate potential for multifamily high density in there with the 10. I think it meets the compliance of based on the acreage size, the units per this.
Does.
It does. Parking, I think that was one of the topics. Now knowing that it's more of a slanted parking versus that actually takes away from that 25 that's needed versus now 15 could be let's just say accepted. And again, this is just a rendering based on this, but I think that if we were to, or if this were to be go forward, a developer in the future could actually come in and implement high density to this parcel. And those are my thoughts there.
Okay, great. I have the same sentiment on this. I think there is potential to build there, and high density could work. It's done right next on the adjacent parcel.
The one to the west is what, 10 units?
You can't remember, it's a 2-story.
It's 8 units.
8 units? And that's a 2-story? Okay.
Any other comments, concerns? Okay, well, given that, is there a motion on this item?
Well, I would recommend that if you are going down that road, it sounds like you are, that option 2 would be considered to continue the public hearing and provide staff with direction on meeting the general plan policy and the Riverbank Municipal Code findings, which I think you've all discussed, and then instruct us to prepare a resolution for formal approval.
Correct.
Okay.
That'd be number 2.
So what we're going to add into that, if we decide to go that way, is that we need, because we need an actual plan. That the sketch is not going to work. That sketch is not.
Well, the
we can't-
sketch is a concept, and
Yeah.
it's
It's a
not
concept, so
required
we
as
need an
part of a
actual
parcel
plan.
We need
map.
to take this step first to get to the design thing.
I mean, but we can't
way
even get a
back.
design because a developer is going to redesign it, or someone's going to redesign it. So
Right.
this is just a barometer of what potentially can be.
I'd agree. So, okay, so essentially what we need to do is to, because the options we have tonight from the staff report is to deny the request, and the other one is to continue the public hearing item to draft another staff report and a resolution that supports that this project is acceptable
So how is our motion going to read then?
Not acceptable, but to render more data.
Well, it's...
Well, and maybe Robin can provide some insight. I understand that you would just continue the public hearing to a date certain and then instruct staff from,
Unless we deny tonight.
that's correct.
We haven't decided that yet.
Right, so we're still on that 1 or 2 here. And if we do 2, we have to kind of either spell out what we're going to be needing or wanting.
Donna, what are your comments?
Well, my comment is I did agree with John Anderson's analysis of this site. One thing that didn't come up is when you do show the 2 parcels together, you take into consideration that around the outside of the original parcel, you have your setbacks. But when you break it in 2, you're adding extra setbacks within, like along the line that divides the 2 parcels. So that does reduce the usable amount. Another consideration is the fact that if this is high-density residential, you're going to be leaving a structure that's non-conforming, that won't be able to be expanded, just maintained, the original house. From projects I've worked on in the past, a lot of times neighborhoods of new housing come to resent the older structures that are left behind, and it becomes a lot of code enforcement for the city. I'm not saying that would happen in this case, but I have seen it happen in other cities where a structure has been left behind among new structures. So that's just some of the things I would consider, you know, if I were in your position.
Thank you. Any comments from our legal staff on our steps to go forward?
I did open up the housing element, and I did note that the inventory, the current inventory, was based on parcels that were 2 acres or larger. So I just would have, you know, if the instruction was to direct staff to come up with new consistency findings, I'd be happy to work with staff to make sure that we have all of our, you know, general plan consistency findings in order. And I would have to review, you know, the inventory in a little bit more detail than from the days here. But it appears from my first review that the current inventory of the regional housing needs assessment is based on parcels of 2 acres or larger.
Thank you. Okay, so are we at a point that we can make a motion? Does anybody make a motion?
You just need to language it.
Well, you could essentially use this. We're not going to approve a resolution tonight because there's no resolution on here. So do we want to continue? Well, let me just ask it that way. Do we want to continue the public hearing at a time certain to approve the above
I think
request?
we have to make a motion for that.
Well, that's what I'm wondering. It sounds like we're not sure
Okay,
of what...
yes, I say we make a motion to go with option 2, to continue the public hearing to a date certain, and the rest of the verbiage there.
Your second?
I'll second that.
Can we get a roll call, please?
Vice Chair Dagley,
Yes.
Kenny,
Yes.
Stewart,
No.
Commissioner Villepatois.
Yes.
Motion passes. Okay, so at this point, do we need to pick a date?
You could pick a date in the future or pick the next planning commission scheduled date.
Well, we could why don't we do that, tentatively set it for the next commission, and if there's an issue that comes up, we'll have to, because you guys are going to do all the work. You know, if you think we can work this out within we're going to need 3 weeks because you have to notice it anyway. So can you do it in 3 weeks? I mean, I don't know what's involved.
I
as
don't
far
see
as-
an issue with that.
Okay.
Next planning commission meeting would be
Next
fine.
does that sound acceptable to you?
Yeah.
Rosanna? Our next planning commission, we could revisit this item with a different staff
Yeah.
report and a
At the next
resolution.
meeting.
Yeah. Okay, let's do that.
Just one question with regard to the extension. It's primarily supposed to determine this. Do we have to repost the property?
Repost the property? Can you explain?
4 by 6
Yeah, you did.
property to advertise this hearing.
I don't think so. Usually it's like, it's a
No,
continuance of an
because
existing
Yeah.
hearing. so-
Yeah, because the public hearing is continued.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to the next item. Thank you for coming and present.
Thank you.
All right, let me get, the next public hearing item is item 3.2, the general plan amendment to the city's safety element.
Okay, give me a second here.
You want to take a 5-minute break to get organized?
No, I just needed to grab my stuff here.
Because we worked for years getting that general plan in place. Just like Domino's, a lot of research went into it. Fighting a lot of late nights.
Where'd everybody go? Give them another
The
3 or 4
safety
years.
elements.
They'll be
They'll-
really
Yeah,
worried
they'll
about
care about it.
It is kind of a cruel insult to have an item on flood hazards,
I know,
right?
I know.
And
I know, it's ironic that we're in this drought and everyone's conserving water and we're talking about extra water.
Okay, item 3.2.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the biggest thing, is there's floods. How do you transport it?
and I'm
Is it by air?
Okay, I'll get started on my presentation on this item. This is an effort that's been going on for quite some time. We've been monitoring Senate Bill 5, which is floodplain legislation that was originally adopted in 2007, but because of some extensions, it's not really coming to pass and a requirement for cities and jurisdictions within the San Joaquin Valley until this year. So to start, this project consists of the following. It's a general plan amendment to the safety element to be consistent with Senate Bill 5 and the Central Valley Flood Protection Plan. Now, the Central Valley Flood Protection Plan is a flood plan that was adopted by the Department of Water Resources, and Senate Bill 5 directed DWR to develop this plan, and it was adopted in 2012. And in that plan, and in Senate Bill 5, there's a requirement for cities and jurisdictions within the Sacramento-San Joaquin Valley to provide policies and goals and implementation measures in their general plan to become 200-year flood protected and to protect urban areas, which is 10,000 or more people, or urbanizing areas, which is 10,000 people within 10 years, to be protected at the 200-year flood plain protection. Now, FEMA is, what we're familiar with is FEMA 100-year flood protection, but this bill and legislation bumps that up to 200-year. And I'll go through that, kind of what that means for the city of Riverbank, that's a very important component. And I did provide some background, but I'll provide a little bit more. 2007, the bill was passed and direct DWR to develop the Central Valley Flood Protection Plan. And that was completed and adopted in 2012. And then require cities and counties within the Central Valley to incorporate the plan into their general plans. The requirements of Senate Bill 5, there's kind of a list of requirements that you have to do. You provide data and analysis contained in the Central Valley Flood Protection Plan in your general plan. Locate flood hazard zones, which includes 100-year and 500-year maps and the locations that those areas are affected. And I have some maps in this presentation that'll show you that. And then goals, policies, and objectives based on data analysis identified in the plan, as well as feasible implementation measures to carry out the goals and policies and objectives to eventually be consistent with the Central Valley Flood Protection Plan and to have a course of action to provide 200-year flood protection where it's needed. And the proposed general plan amendment includes information on the 100-year and 500-year floodplain zones and not the 200-year, and I'll explain why. And the 100-year floodplain is identified in blue, and that generally just follows the Stanislaus River in the designated floodway that's identified from FEMA Really no real property in Riverbank's affected. A little bit of Jacob Myers Park, the ponds for, go ahead, sorry.
Is the flood zones?
Yes, in blue.
In blue, yeah.
Yeah, in blue is the flood zones. As you can see, there is some impact, near Burwood, north of the city in San Joaquin Valley. It doesn't really affect Riverbank, and this is in our general plan area. And some of this area is designated in the general plan for residential. But it will be a long time until that comes to pass, since the sphere of influence ends generally right about here, right here. And then this is the 500-year floodplain. FEMA updates these maps every time there's a flood, and these maps were updated last in 2008 as a result of the 2007-2008 El Nino. So every time there's a big flood, they update their maps. Now, as you can see from the 500-year, there are areas affected, and mainly it's River Cove, in that bluff area. But it doesn't get above that. It doesn't go into, the main portions of the city. And there is a little bit of effect with the wastewater treatment plant and in the greater general plan area, as well as the San Joaquin County. Now, for the 200-year floodplain, DWR, because of Senate Bill 5, did release 200-year floodplain maps, but not in Stanislaus County. They did it for Chico, Sacramento, basically counties and jurisdictions up north. And, we monitor it because we initially thought that eventually maps would be released for areas all up and down the Sacramento San Joaquin River, but unfortunately they're not. There are some preliminary maps by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and discussions with this company called Peterson Brewstad Incorporated. They are the company that is working with Lathrop and Manteca and the Reclamation District, I think number 17, to develop 200-year floodplain maps, and they have done that. Generally speaking, we've had some conversations with them. They have recommended that we do not really need to have 200-year floodplain maps because generally they follow the 500-year floodplain to some extent and follow the Stanislaus River floodway because there's pretty high bluff for Riverbank. And they provided us with some insight on what we need to do moving forward, which I'll go over here in a little bit. And we've updated, in the staff report and the resolution, we've updated some of the goals and policies. The first is that critical facilities not be located within the 200-year flood zone. And an important factor to that within the Senate Bill 5 is that if you do not know exactly where the 200-year floodplain is, then you fall back on the 500-year floodplain. So there is some decision-making that for land use that we do have to go through when we consider new projects, and we will be developing that for our zoning code, which needs to be updated next year at this time. Let me run through this, and I'll kind of come back and kind of go over a little bit more in detail on some of those requirements. And then we have some new policies. Policy 1.3 is to ensure that the city is in compliance with the Central Valley Flood Protection Plan. 1.14 is the city, as necessary, will participate in a regional flood management plan. There are regional flood management plans that are active right now, mainly along the San Joaquin River with Stockton, Manteca, up north as well. We're not really affected by that just because we're further east of the San Joaquin River, and some of those flood issues do not affect us because we're kind of far up the tributary of Stanislaus County, or Stanislaus River, sorry.
Oh, wait, can you go back?
Sure.
No, there you, keep going. There you go. So would we have to retrofit those buildings, or does that apply to only new construction because
New
it
cons-
doesn't say.
New construction. Yeah, new construction. We wouldn't have to retrofit that building.
Does it say new construction because it doesn't there?
Well, it would be
I think
major.
it's implied because the policies would only take in place when you have an application for a new entitlement or new development.
Yeah.
So.
Thank you, Robin. And the policy 1.15 is the city will maintain, update, and make available to the public as appropriate FEMA 100-year and 500-year flood insurance rate maps and 200-year floodplain maps as they become available from the Department of Water Resources. I know I stated earlier that they have not released any, but that doesn't mean that in the future they won't. And then policy 1.16 is the city will use the best available flood hazard information and mapping from regional, state, and federal agencies and use this information to inform land use and public facilities investment decisions. And then for implementation measures, the city will review annually and update as necessary appropriate general plan elements to reflect current floodplain mapping data available from local, regional, state, and federal agencies to ensure best available flood risk mapping information is contained in the general plan. And the reason why this implementation measure is included is that the Central Valley Flood Protection Plan is updated, I think about every 10 years. So they do update the information in that plan over time. So, based on what they update, we may want to go into the general plan and modify some language, include maps, include some more policies or implementation measures as necessary. And then the last implementation measure is the city will amend the zoning code. And that's an important component because we have these general plan policies and we need the zoning code to help implement them. And what this will mean for the city of Riverbank is that we're thinking of doing kind of a decision-making tree. So say if there's a new project, you would kind of go through, is it located within the Sacramento, San Joaquin Valley? Yes, check mark that box. Is it located within a 100-year floodplain? Yes. Is it located within a 500-year? Then it might not be, so you say no. Then that kicks you out of the 200-year floodplain requirement. And those improvements to, say, maybe a levee or anything that could protect or raising the building or what have you, those improvements, they will be shouldered mainly from private investment developers, depending on what the situation is. So that's what we're thinking, because most of Riverbank is outside of the 500-year, and River Cove, which is in a 500-year floodplain, is fully developed, and it doesn't really affect, small like re-roofings or, ministerial acts, only if it results in a new structure. And then for CEQA, we came to the determination that this proposed general plan amendment is exempt from CEQA, stating that this only applies to projects because we're updating it based on state law and state requirements. And then moving forward, we are working with Oakdale and Ripon to develop the language for the zoning ordinance amendment that will come forth next year. And we are working also with that company, Peterson and Brewstad, to help us with the language that needs to be in that ordinance, so to make that process easy for us. And then that requirement is by July of next year, July of 2016, per Senate Bill 5.
Just out of curiosity, I guess, these consultants, we have them. We're paying for that. Is that correct?
Not yet. We've requested that they provide us with a proposal, but we haven't. We're so early in the process that we haven't really done anything on paper at all. Mm-hmm. And
is this something staff? Maybe I'm digging into a.
It could, yeah.
I don't know if that's their bailiwick. Whatever. I'm not questioning your judgment on it. I'm just kind of curious about Is this something our legal in-house staff can take care of, or?
It could. There is a lot of information out there in regards to when Senate Bill 5 would kick in. So there is an opportunity for us to do a little bit more research and develop language and, work with our legal staff and work with in-house and work with the cities of Oakdale and Riverbank, because they're in the same boat that we are. So we do have opportunities to kind of come together collectively and develop language that would make that decision-making tree happen. So,
Okay.
yeah, we've only been in, I think, one conversation with Peterson, because, and they kind of looked at our situation, looked at the floodplains, and initially recommended that, no, you don't have to do a full-blown hydrological study to find out exactly where a 200-year floodplain is. Based on the 500-year, actually pretty much all the cities out of it. So why not go this other route and develop language in the zoning code that would help meeting Senate Bill 5 requirements, as well as helping us make a land use decision that's safe and that provides a very clear, streamlined, opportunity for us. So, does that answer your question?
Yeah, to some degree, yeah. Thanks.
Yeah. And then, of course, our recommendation is that the Planning Commission move forward with a recommendation to City Council to adopt the proposed general plan amendment, and then that would amend the safety element to meet Senate Bill 5 and the Central Valley Flood Protection Plan.
Okay, anybody have any questions for staff?
Yeah, when we were putting the general plan together, this didn't come up?
No, it's in a small discussion in the EIR, but at that time there wasn't enough information. Even though the bill was adopted, DWR was still working on the Central Valley Flood Protection Plan, and that wasn't adopted until 2012. So there was still a little bit of confusion on when these requirements would need to happen. So, yeah.
So weren't we working on this in 2013 and 14?
Working on the
General plan.
Well, the general plan was adopted in 2009.
Okay, but we've been working with the general plan.
Well, we were working, we have
Amendments.
Yeah, we have done a few amendments related to projects, just like Carrie Pope's Diamond Bar East and West, and also some inconsistencies with the mixed-use properties, as well as some commercial properties, some cleanup based on consistency between the general plan and zoning code. So we didn't fold this effort in because we're simply waiting for more information from DWR and trying to get an understanding of what really needed to happen as far as language in the general plan.
Have all this now?
Yeah, this general plan amendment fulfills the requirements of Senate Bill 5 of the information that you have to have in your general plan.
So what's the added cost of this now?
The added cost? I mean, just developing the language, just staff resources, staff time, but the added cost on a more broad level, it's yet to be seen. If a developer comes in and is developing on a floodplain, then those costs would be incurred through their requirements for the city.
I mean, for us to amend our general plan.
Oh, and it's staff time and resources.
Well, and I have a question. You said River Cove is included in the 100-year flood?
No, it's not. It's not within the 100-year, but it's within the 500-year.
Okay, and that would not be enough to trigger mandatory flood insurance, right?
It would not. It actually does not affect mandatory flood insurance.
Only new.
We go, FEMA is mandatory flood insurance, not Senate Bill 5. This is a state level bill, not federal.
FEMA is the one that provides the time the 100 years to 500 years?
That's correct.
So
Yeah.
there's no place in Riverbank that would be required to do flood insurance?
No, based on the FEMA map. Yeah. Yeah, and I zoomed in on River Cove to make sure there's no buildings that, had like a sliver of
Exactly.
flood insurance.
And again, this
flood.
would only pertain, like, if it were in the 500, then those residents would require it? Or is it new?
It would be new.
And the 500, the FEMA requirement's for the 100-year flood only, right?
That's correct.
So
Right.
the FEMA
Okay.
requirement
Yeah.
doesn't kick in for the 500-year.
Okay.
Yeah, the people within 500-year floodplain are not required to have flood insurance for 500-year flood. It's only 100-year.
Okay, any other questions? I'm going to open the public hearing. Seeing no comments, I'm going to close the public hearing. And wanting to know if there's any more comments or questions for the staff. And I would like to see if we have, is there a motion to adopt resolution 2015-014?
With the motion, with the...
You can be right after, if you want to.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that we move to adopt resolution number 2015-014, recommending to the City Council the approval of the general plan amendment for the Riverbank General Plan Safety Element Update.
I'll second it.
Roll call, please.
Vice Chair Dagley?
Yes.
Yes.
Commissioner Stewart?
Yes.
And Commissioner Villador?
Yes.
Unanimous passes. Great, okay, so let's move to commission items. Anybody have
I do.
information?
Because I'm thinking out loud, and I've been thinking about this for a while. We're all watching our water usage, and now it's mandatory. And this problem is not going away. So my thought is that when we're thinking about adding additional homes to the area, that someone should consider the effect that all of these additional homes are going to have on our current water supply, because we're never going to be lush with water in this area. And I think that this is going to be ever more important. So I think that the Planning Commission has to take a really good look at how we're going to handle this. That's my thought.
Well, that would be more in terms of building standards and requirements, huh? So he's the guy. You could
Well,
get that going.
And Michael Rydell, from Public Works, he has a really keen eye on water usage because of the requirements of the city has to submit monthly reports on water usage for the reason for the state to determine what the, and I'm sorry I'm struggling here, but to determine what the cut should be percentage-wise for the cities. That's why you see Modesto, Riverbank, Ripon, they're all at different percentages, and it's based on water usage, continual water usage on a monthly
How can we
report.
continue to make cuts if we're adding a whole bunch of new houses?
True.
Because those are all going to be requiring water. So we can have all of the current residents of the city cutting back, but you're going to have a whole bunch of new homes, a stone's throw from my house. Those houses are all going to be having lawns and showers and dishwashers and everything. So how in the world
Well,
is this all going to come together?
I think part of it is when they're looking at the annual 2013 volumes, that's what they're basing
That's what
everything
they
on,
are.
2013. They're looking at the
14 or-
whole events, all the events that created new development through the 2,000-year period. So it kind of, in a way, sort of takes into account any new projects. So, I mean, I think you've got a good point there. But like the one that Pope's project that just got approved, I don't know, you really can't stand in the way and say, you can't have any water.
Well, maybe
Can
we
you?
should think
Well,
about that before we approve a whole bunch of new residences. That's when we
Right.
have to think about it. It's
a
called
question that we
planning.
need
I
to
think
have
there's-
that clear, yeah.
There's also the requirement for larger developments that, the developers have to submit a water supply assessment with new developments. And I think that it'll be incumbent on the city to make sure that those are scrutinized in more, in more detail.
Findings are
that
there.
When they assess out and say, oh, we have enough water for 30 or 40 years, when it comes time to review those applications, those will have to be reviewed.
I think that we're going to have to start taking really long, hard looks at this, because they can keep sinking new wells to provide water for new development, but those aquifers only hold so much water, and they're not being restored right now. So
I know some cities are giving rebates to folks that are changing their lawn structure, their landscaping. Is the city of Riverbank planning that or something like that? Has that been talked about or considered? No?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I haven't heard it either.
Yeah, Michael would be the
Many
one
cities
to.
that are doing that.
I know John, I think the last meeting, he said that it might be a good idea to get Michael in here to discuss
Correct.
some of these issues. So I'll bring it up to him for the next planning commission meeting. Maybe he can come in and maybe provide some insight on what he's doing to help alleviate some stress and what the capacity is looking like for new development and such like that.
I think that's a keen idea, and in fact, I would say it might be even more impactful if we have a joint council planning commission, because, look, right now, we've got nobody here, and if we could have both groups together, we'd probably have a bigger group, maybe even have a workshop that says, these are our steps, these are the steps you need to take as residents, and there's a lot of questions out there. My neighbors are asking things all the time. He said, "Are you on the planning commission? What's going on out there?" And I say, that's a good question. If we could get some benchmarks, like, okay, we know we can only water Monday and Friday, but there's got to be more to it, to the story than that. Like, how long do we do that? What do you foresee in 6 months or a year? I think that'd be a really good thing for the city. I know it would be for my neighbors, because they're kind of wondering what's going on. And I had a guy a few weeks ago call the sheriff because his neighbor had the water going at the wrong time of the afternoon. He was watering some plants, and he said, "I'm calling the sheriff." The sheriff actually came out.
Well, the city does have a water, I think it's a water coordinator.
Yeah.
That does handle those phone calls, and there's information on the city's website for people to call in for those types of issues. And I'm not really sure how many calls they're getting, but, yeah.
Oh, I bet. Well, that's even better. That would make it more, if we could get a broader presentation versus everybody kind of doing their own thing and trying to figure it out themselves.
I have a thought. Mine is this: is that it stretches beyond our planning commission, more likely. But if we can tank in oil, gasoline, and other consumable items like that from abroad. I mean, just on the news today, we hear mass flooding and rain in other parts of the country.
Talking about that.
But then we're suffering with a drought.
Water
but
crisis,
then, the country or
Didn't we talk
whatever
about that day?
We talked about that the other day.
No,
there's
we're
not
at
a
the-
shortage of water, just a shortage of water on this side of the globe.
Yeah.
Big issue, yeah.
And until we come up with something like that we could, because like she said, that the way things are going, we're not getting any more water. But then if we say, okay, we're going to stop building, now our city stops growing, and our revenue is based on the city growing, and the city has to grow in order for industry to take root and say, okay, we're going to come there because you have enough people to supply our manufacturing or whatever it is, education, that's going to be needed for these particular places. So if we go into saying, we want to stop building because we want to preserve the water for the residents that are right here, now we stagnate ourselves from stop growing.
Well, those are things that we can address. I mean, those you're talking really great big items too, and those are all things that we're all worried about if we're going to have enough water. So, I mean, I would highly recommend doing that. I think it'd be fantastic. Okay, any county referrals? Nobody?
No.
Upcoming?
Upcoming meeting.
Upcoming meetings? I guess it looks like we're,
Well, the next will be in the Galaxy Theater. They're coming back to modify their use permit.
Again,
Yeah, they're, for the beer and
Mhm.
wine.
Larger, huh?
oh,
Get some larger,
Cups.
cup sizes for just
Right.
beer.
okay.
we already told them it's a certain size, right?
But they're coming back.
Yeah, you guys, as part of that conditional use permit for their luxury seating and for their beer and wine, you guys limited the size of the cups for the alcoholic beverages. So they're coming back to modify that.
So they want to modify the cup size, huh? Okay.
Okay, so before we adjourn, I just want to welcome Donna as our new planning manager, right? Excellent. Well, good luck, and we're going to probably twist your arm right here and there, a few things. So.
I'm used to it.
Okay, without,
So did the city bring you out of retirement?
No, actually, I worked for the city of Livingston for 8 years and got laid off with 4 other employees. So then I became a contract planner, and I contracted with the city of Hayward for a year. And they had somebody go out on leave, and so I took her place, and they kept me for a couple of months to take care of some backlogs that they had on projects. So this is my first position since
And how did you
working for
find out
Hayward.
about our sweet oasis over here?
I actually had probably 5 or 6 different planning professionals I've worked with in the past call me or email me and say, hey, did you hear about Riverbank? We think that'd be a good spot for you. So I applied.
Livingston's great. Okay, well,
Welcome.
Thank
welcome
you.
for sure.
Yeah, welcome.
Thank you very much.
I'd like to adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everybody.
30 minutes of the
Oh,
game.
we have game left, so I gotta run and go watch it. I can't wait to get out there.
Time to run.
Oh, my goodness.
My hope.